Alright, so do we have yet another weapon situation on our hands with Augusta's weapon here, like we had with Brant, like we had with Frolova, and so many of the recently released unit lately? Or are we actually seeing a situation where this weapon might be potentially a little bit of a skip? Let's go ahead and talk about this. So real quick TLDR in case you guys didn't know, the DPS slot in Wuthering Waves has been bombarded lately with signature weapons that are massively overpowered compared to the stuff that we used to see for characters in the past. They've also started to become much more niche. So the weapons have become more niche, more specific to certain characters and teams, but also more powerful. And for some characters like Brant or Frolova, the power spike and the synergy with their signature weapon is so high that not having it almost feels like playing a completely different character. The performance is night and day. In fact, in the case of Brant and Frolova, not having the signature weapon causes them to actually fall down a tier or even two, but having those weapons make them some of the best characters in the entire game. And to be perfectly honest with you, Augusta seems like yet another one of those characters. However, it does not mean that you necessarily should pull or even need to pull this weapon. Let's get into it. We all know the weapon looks cool, so let's talk about the important stuff, the actual combat effects that this weapon will have. So it increases the attack by 12%, and casting an intro skill or resonance skill increases the heavy attack damage by 20% for 15 seconds. Obtaining a shield allows heavy attack damage to ignore 7.2% of the target's defense for 7 seconds, and it can stack up to 5 times. This effect is triggered once every 0.5 seconds, so every half of a second. And this would end up equating to 36% defense ignore if it's fully stacked up, but just be aware it does run out, so you're not necessarily always going to have the defense ignore fully stacked up. But if you keep her on field a lot and you're constantly attacking, you should be able to keep it pretty darn active. We also can't miss out on the elephant in the room because it's so frigging big. This fat base attack stat of 675. There is nothing in the game with anything like that. This is insane, and things are going to scale very well off of this character because of this base stat. Not to mention you have 12.1% crit rate. Why the 1%? Why the 0.1? I mean, thanks, but like, what is this, pennies you're throwing at us? Now, you may have noticed that the conditions for the buffs for this weapon are very similar to other Broadblade weapons, such as Gions, Jinshis, Lupas. You see the casting intro skill, resonance skill, heavy attack synergy. There are similarities here, and this means this weapon can work on other Broadblade users. However, it needs to be noted that the most important effect on this weapon is the second part here, which requires you to get a shield so that you can get your heavy attack synergy, so that your heavy attacks are defense ignoring. And this effect is not going to be able to be used by every character in the game. Sadly, the only other character I can think of that might be able to utilize this in a way that might kind of work is Lupa, because she's on a team with Brant a lot of the time, and this doesn't say that she has to provide herself a shield. It says obtaining a shield, so you just have to give her a shield. Somebody on the team just has to give her one, and she'll be able to get this effect. So this technically could work on Lupa for the second effect, and we might see some fun, interesting, like, week 1 goofy attempts at some fun stuff with that, but it needs to be noted that the weapon is a little bit more niche than the other Broadblades in the game. Other Broadblades in the game simply aren't as restrictive as this one. However, it needs to be noted, like we mentioned earlier, that this is a massive power spike for Augusta, and that cannot be stressed enough, but it's mostly a power spike for her. And let's take a quick peek at some of these other Broadblade weapons. You'll notice there's only 4 5-star Broadblade weapons in the entire game, and one of them came out fairly recently with Lupa. One of them is from the standard banner, and I don't really recommend using on her if you have like any of these other ones as an option, because Lustrous Razor just is not as good. It doesn't synergize with her as well. It's just simply not the best of the standard roster weapons we have. And I think that Verdant Summer is going to be probably her next best in slot. I also like Wildfire Mark. It increases the attack by 12%. This is Lupa's weapon, right? The only problem is this last part here. This fusion damage bonus is not going to help her. She's a electro user, so this first part here, though, is pretty good. I would say that, you know, you have Gion's weapon here, which has attribute damage, which is also good. You have this ability here that gives him 24% bonus heavy attack damage, and it can stack twice, and it lasts for 14 seconds. So that's pretty solid, and it's pretty static. I think you're gonna, and also the crit damage bonus on this is nuts. You'll notice that the attack bonus on like every single one of these weapons is roughly the same, 587. 588, I guess they wanted to give Lupa the smallest boost in the entire world to her attack stat compared to what you had on everything else. You'll notice this is significantly lower than Augusta's base attack on her signature weapon. She also gets all these extra bonuses. If you're an Augusta main, you're an Augusta user, or if you're new to the game and you don't have any of these other options, Augusta's weapon is going to be fantastic for you. However, I don't necessarily feel like it's the best value pick for a lot of long-time players' accounts if they already have some of these other weapons, right? I can't talk about like her resonance chains or anything like that yet because I don't think those are public yet. In a few days, though, we'll be doing a tier list video for her once she comes out, just like normal. We'll go over all of that stuff, but I feel like a lot of players would probably rather invest into a resonance chain for her, or maybe another character that can synergize well with her, rather than go for her weapon if you already have a solid weapon option. If you already have one of these four, for example, let's not talk about Lustrous Razor. If you have Age of Harvest, Verdant Summer, or Wildfire Mark, you're probably okay on Augusta's weapon. You probably can skip. So, should you pull this weapon? Well, I gotta separate this into two different groups. You have returning players that already have a decent weapon option for her, and then the other group of people that are newer to the game and are pretty much only available at using a 4-star option, which is not really an option for her, let's just be honest, okay? And so if you're part of that first group, if you've been playing the game a while and you already got a decent weapon option, I would highly suggest not pulling her weapon day one. Play her out, test her out, take her into tower and everything like that, feel her out, build her, etc., because you can't even pre-farm her properly until the patch actually drops. Then get a feel for if you actually feel like you need the weapon or not, because you might not, and I have a feeling most returning players might end up skipping this to pull something more high value, even just another character like Chissa down the line or something like that, right? If you're a part of that second group, you're newer to the game, you don't really have a lot of options for her, and you like Broadblade characters, this is definitely a very good pick for your account, okay? Seriously, there's not a lot of Broadblade characters in the game, so there's not a lot of weapon options for those characters in the game right now. It also means you don't necessarily need them as often because you don't use those characters as often per se, but if you really like one of those characters, Augusta's weapon is really gonna help you out here. So don't get it twisted, okay? This is not a situation of skip or pull. This is going to be circumstantial to everybody's individual account, whether they should consider this weapon or not. Now I gotta cut in real quick here, because in the process of editing this video, I actually found out that there's a Battle Pass weapon coming to us soon that actually does work for Augusta and other Broadblade users, but I gotta reiterate something I mentioned earlier. There's not a lot of Broadblade users in the game, and you probably want to take this weapon all the way to rank 5. That's 5 patches. 5 battle passes you're gonna dump into this one weapon? I don't know, bro. For the Broadblade users of the game, there's not a whole lot of them per se, right? You might find a more value pick or a weapon that can be utilized on more characters on your account. For example, most characters in this game have been sword users or rectifier users. Maybe one of those is a better weapon choice for the Battle Pass, considering the Battle Pass is a very, very long-term investment and plan. You can't immediately take that thing all the way to its highest rank. It's going to take a long time to do, so I don't necessarily suggest you guys do this unless you're very, very confident that this weapon can really boost your account. Now, I briefly want to talk about this. This is not the point of the video, but let's just talk about it real quick here because it does factor in the weapon situation, usually mostly for the DPS slot in Wuthering Waves. has become a bit of an issue, okay? These weapons are becoming really, really strong, practically predatory, and really inching people to want to pull these weapons when they don't even necessarily have to. They see some massive power spike and they think, oh my god, I have to have that or the character doesn't work or something like that. And it simply is not necessarily true. However, there are some characters, I used Brant and Frolova as examples, that without their signature, it is so vastly different. Night and day, the damage results that you'll see with the characters, okay? That's not to say that you can't play them with a, like, 4-star weapon or something like that. You can. It just makes it more difficult, it requires more effort, and it makes it harder to build the character in a lot of cases. I mean, bro, for the signature weapon for some of these characters, you're getting plus 40% extra compared to the standard banner option in some cases, and some of these options from the standard banner are like actually good weapons, bro. And look, I totally understand the power level of the game going up. It naturally happens. I call it the natural progression of a game. You have power creep in some games, and in other games you have what's called the natural progression of the game. But we jumped from weapons that were like plus 16% on a good weapon to now like plus 40-something%. And this happened in a matter of months, not years, months. I love this game, okay? This has been in my top 3 gachas since it came out and still is to this day. But we can love the game and not be blind, right? The weapon situation exists. Is it a major problem? Not for people that are paying attention and keeping aware, but I worry about how it will affect the game going forward, okay? So this isn't like some big smear campaign or anything like that. I just wanted to address it because it's been a thing and people have asked me about it. Just keep your awareness on you and don't pull things you shouldn't pull. Anyways, maybe we'll address the weapon situation in a separate video in the future if this continues. But for now, I'll see you guys in the next one. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Peace out.